I think we are, yeah, we're good to go. So Ben Demden,
Hello.
how are you, friend?
Good. How are you?
Good. How many years do you think we've known each other?
For, I don't know,
Do you believe
13, 14
yeah, it's
years,
around 15 years.
15 years. Yeah, about that.
God, it feels like it's flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has flown by. 15
Yeah.
years is not long, hey?
Not well, you think about it as not being long, but it's easily a full career.
Yeah, true. Well, yeah, look at that in 15 years.
Look at all the fucking crazy shit we've done in that 15 years.
Uh-huh, absolutely.
Yeah, you and I met, you were my sensei in coffee at campus.
Yeah, so you say.
So I say, remember, you were B1 and I was B nothing.
Yeah, no, I remember those days clearly.
That was crazy time in coffee in the coffee world in Sydney. That was like when it was all starting to properly bubble up, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. It was a lot of fun.
It was
Um,
crazy, huh?
it was a bit out of control, yeah. I mean, people had a lot of fun with it, and I think um, customers and coffee industry insiders alike had fun with it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's, and I mean, yeah, that's fun. That's good. It's a bit different now. There's a lot more people involved now, but I think it's still
Yeah.
fun if we want to make it fun.
I mean, back then the scene was really starting to become what we call now specialty, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
There was more people there's still the ratio of people using, I guess, what we'd consider commodity coffee now, or people who roast in a really dark roast, uh, really dark roasts. There was still the Segafredos and the Illies and all
Yeah,
of that were still the majority back then. And this idea of anyone who was roasting like Campos, which was where we worked together, there was still a minority back then. But now it's a whole different game, isn't it?
yeah. Now it is a very different game. I mean, now you see, the kind of bigger companies like Vittoria or so forth. Now they're trying to copy what what's been the ultimate product of this kind of third wave, coffee revolution or whatever it was in places like Sydney and Melbourne in Australia, and all over Australia now, I think. Yeah, it's it it was, yeah, super exciting because when customers responded well to that, that was super exciting.
And they
Like, I mean,
did,
I,
didn't
I
they?
grew up. I grew up, when I grew up, like if you drank Victoria, you were pretty cool, trust me.
Yeah,
And
right?
then it was like, oh, if you drank Lavazza, you were really cool. Or if you drank Illy, you were like, yeah, man, I just drink Illy because it's like
Because I'm that
Arabica,
cool.
and I like it because it's really smooth or whatever. Like, so to be there and people going, wow, this coffee is amazing, and it come over from drinking Illy or
Yeah.
Lavazza, as a young person who'd kind of grown up thinking these Italian brands were the best thing in the world, is pretty cool. Like, yeah, wow, we're awesome. Man, we really are all that.
Well, it was a bizarre time to be like working at Campos back in that day, wasn't it? Like people would come from all over to get coffee from Campos. You know, baristas would come from all over Australia to drink there.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool. It was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty exciting. Like, it was pretty eye opening. Um, yeah, I mean,
I
it was transformative for me in
Uh,
my
yes.
kind of life.
Yeah. I don't think there's anyone that actually could say that Campos didn't play a transformative role in their life if they didn't work there for an extended period of time. You know,
Exactly, for
it
better or
was
for worse.
for better or for worse. We won't touch that one too much. But I used to remember every time I hear someone mention a ristretto these days.
Yeah.
I remember when we used to pull them like 10 drops, like it used to run for just 10 seconds or something like that.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
the black, I remember who used to come in and say, dude, the blacker the better. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, maybe. I
It
mean,
was-
yeah, people got a bit carried away. Um, I mean, yeah, people were like, "How short can you go on a ristretto?" Like, yeah, there's not even anything in the cup. That's
no,
how
it
long
was a
a
few
ristretto is.
drops. It was like, this is, I don't know what we're doing here, but somehow this is supposed to be good.
Yeah,
And back then I was a sheep. Back then I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and I was just doing what all the other cool kids were doing because I was too scared to admit I had no idea what I was doing.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people in that situation, um, yeah. Look, and then it's kind of gone in the other direction in Australia as well since then, and I mean that's to the extent where people were pulling like really sour shots of
Yeah.
under roasted coffee and being like, this is the best thing ever.
Super
So
light roasted, pulling it for
extremes have
50
been committed
seconds,
on all
50,
sides.
60 seconds.
and and that kind of flamboyantness or that attitude is one thing that I think attracted a lot of people. It attracted me. Like I was like, wow, these guys are crazy. They'll do anything. But I think it's also one of the things that pull people off as well. And people are like, oh yeah, these guys are just tossers, hey.
They're very
So
much. Is that cheers to you, friend?
yeah, cheers.
What are you drinking? What did you make
I'm
this
just
morning?
drinking water.
Cheers.
Yes.
Yeah, it was absolutely off-putting and exciting all at the same time. Like you didn't know there was clearly a line, huh? That
Mm-hmm.
where people were too cool for school, and I'm seeing a lot of that still exist in our industry. I don't know if it's just me or what. I think that people are torn between really wanting to be a part of a community and but also still being too scared to let anyone know that they don't know what they're doing. So there's this bravado that's associated with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know that that's ever going to change in our industry. I hope it does, but um, yeah, it definitely exists over here. Uh, I see our industry um, here in the States to be at a very similar stage from a professional perspective as where our industry in Australia was when I started working at Campos.
Okay.
It's not from the coffee perspective. That's a whole different thing. But from the career and business development side of things, Australia is a very saturated market now.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's not. Here it's just starting to really gain some traction, and there's a
Yeah.
good 10 years in it here at least before it gets to the point where it is in Australia. And what comes with that is people are starting to see a legitimate career in coffee. It's the very early stages of that, and with that comes a sense of, well, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and I'm going to exactly what happened 10, 15 years ago in Australia. It's
Okay.
really exciting to watch it evolve and be able to have been through what it was in the Australian industry and then to see what it's going to be like over here.
Mm-hmm.
Fun
Well,
times.
yeah, I mean, it is. It's interesting, and having been to the States a few times, I'm interested in how it does continue to expand in the US, because I found the specialty scene in the US really interesting, and I
In
have
what
really good
way?
coffees in the US. Um, well, places that I've kind of visited more cafes would be in Seattle, Portland, and LA. I found for example, in Seattle, I found people's attitudes in the cafes were very unpretentious. Cafe fit outs are like super humble. Like I was walking into cafes that were super humble and their fit outs and having really good coffee.
Yeah.
Like great espresso. Like, wow, this is amazing. One of the best espressos I've ever had. So I knew people were paying attention to their roasting, and I knew people were paying attention to training baristas, and baristas were paying attention to making good coffee. And this is in a place where these people aren't making heaps of money. Hey, like these guys aren't getting rich. They're not driving Audi sports cars, nor these are people who have come into specialty coffee through a desire to do specialty coffee rather than through a desire to have, make money. I mean, obviously everybody in business wants to and needs to make money, but, having great coffees in places where you walk in and go, wow, I didn't expect that I'd have a great coffee from an Australian perspective.
I find that throws me a lot here though. I feel we're very spoilt with fit outs in Australia. Like every cafe you go to is pretty in some way. Like design is a big part of the Australian industry. Don't you agree? Or do you agree?
Yes, I do think so. Yeah. I think it's become that way in the last 10 years.
Yeah. And
sure.
Then
I mean, like 10, 20 years ago.
Oh,
20
fuck
years
no.
Ago, people were doing their cafe on a shoestring, and people are still doing cafes on a shoestring and being successful. And I think now I'm actually seeing, I've visited more cafes in Australia recently, which I've seen that people have fitted them out on a tight budget, and they're serving great coffee.
Are they doing well?
Yeah, I think so.
That's the trick question though, right? Isn't it? Like, how do you even know if someone's doing actually really well? I'm hearing some ridiculous numbers for fit outs, dude. I'm hearing $1 million fit outs, $2 million fit outs, and people going bust within the first year.
Well, yeah, I think that's a big risk. It's certainly something that I've thought a lot about, having just opened a cafe 9 months ago and spent heaps of money on a fit out, and thinking, okay, that's a whole bunch of money laid down that you're going to potentially need to stay in business, because keeping the doors open on that business costs you thousands and thousands of dollars every week. And if you're not pulling that cash in, you got to get that money somewhere. So if you spend $250,000 on a fit out, and you spent 50 grand of that on stuff that maybe you didn't really need, or maybe was like over budget $50,000, that might be $50,000 that you need to pay your staff.
Yeah.
That might be $50,000 you need to pay your suppliers. And, I mean, I've got suppliers right now I owe money to, and they'll be like, yeah, dude, like, you shouldn't have spent so much money on your fit out. Sell that grinder that you're not using that costs you $3,500 and pay off my bills, Yeah. I mean, if I did it again, I'd spend less on a fit out.
And where do you draw the line, though? Because...
Well, yeah, indeed.
You know what I mean? It's particularly when the competition is so fierce. I just think there's so many really pretty cafes in Sydney, and especially in the Instagram era, people eat with their eyes just as much as they eat with their palate, and people want to be able to, go somewhere that's pretty so it's Instagrammable. And I feel like you end up losing business to the cool millennial crowd. And as much as people say, I don't give a fuck about the millennials or whatever, or the Gen Xers or whoever they don't give a fuck about, well, you're an idiot, because that's business that's walking out the door if you're not trying to cater to everybody, or at least everyone that's within the niche of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think, if you got to spend some money there, and you do need to make an attractive space. And I think that's one of the fun and pleasurable things of being a cafe owner. It's like, yeah, I'm going to spend all this money and it's going to be really pretty and it's going to be an expression of my fantastic taste, right? So like for me, that's really fun. But then I'm like, okay, I think you kind of need to plan it out, and you kind of need to then go, okay, let's double and triple check it and just see where we can shave things off that maybe, we don't need. So I would just scrutinize it more. But of course, you need the time to do that. And if you're paying rent on a space while you're fitting it out, or you're chewing into a rent-free period while you're fitting it out, you're conscious that you just want to get this thing fitted out and looking great so you can open the doors and start making some money. Because you're not making any money, you're just paying money for that whole beginning period. And if you let that get away, wow, that can kill you. Yeah, and it's true. And places are opening with that are beautiful all over Australia, from Hobart to Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne, all up and down the East Coast, and going broke in the first year, or going broke in the second year. And the statistics on cafes and other kind of restaurants and things going broke in Australia in their first couple of years are pretty eye-opening for people considering getting into the industry in Australia. Like, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless your level of commitment is like 100%.
And then some.
It's going to be really hard. Yeah, it's going to be really hard, and you're going to question why you're doing it a number of times, and you're going to have to make numerous sacrifices. All the while really having faith or hoping that one day you'll actually make some money out of this venture. Hopefully enough to make it like worth your while doing it, right?
Not just to guarantee yourself a job that you don't get paid for.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, if you were thinking, I'm going to open a cafe in Sydney or Melbourne or Hobart even, and you could open a cafe in Hobart now and potentially make a killing, I would say, because there's like it's a city which is experiencing a minor boom of sorts, but that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to do that. And if you don't keep your eyes on your spreadsheets, you might find out that you spent all the money on some beautiful Italian tiles, and then it's curtains. And the best you might be able to do is get those tiles off the bench and salvage some of the equipment and get a little bit of money back to pay some of the people that you owe, and try and sort out some kind of arrangements with other people that you owe. Like, it's a pretty bleak thing going broke or bankrupt. It's a
terrible juggling. It's the worst kind of juggling that you have to do, and if you don't have the stomach for it, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Did it surprise you?
For me, yeah, like it didn't really surprise me so much because I expected it to be very difficult. So I kind of worked on, managing my own expectations around how it would be, and managing them to understand, it's going to be really hard. But it did, I did. I feel like you always think you'll manage things better than you actually will. Like, you're like, I'll be fine. And then you're like,
dude, I can absolutely
an emotional wreck. I'm probably going to have a nervous breakdown right now. So
I get it.
Okay, yeah. So maybe you thought you'd handle that kind of situation better than you actually did. So that's one thing that's important for people to realize as well. It's like, how are you going to react in these situations? And it's going to put a lot of pressure on you. How will you handle it? But you know, you only really know yourself when your back's against the wall. So maybe that's when you truly find out who you are, and then you're like, okay.
I couldn't agree more. I think that you have to figure out if you've got the stomach to do this, whether it be a business owner or be an entrepreneur. And the thing that I tell everybody is get very comfortable with the discomfort that's about to be a constant hum in your life for a few years. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's would be a good piece of advice. Yes, I agree. Yeah, being able to sit with that discomfort and being like, yeah, sure, like I'm, you know, I owe people all this money. I'm working on a plan with them to make all my payments and to catch up on my payments or whatever. That's not comfortable. That's humbling. That's something that, you know, is going to be a constant. So you need to be able to still carry on, and you need to be able to carry on in your business, operating your business, and you need to also be able to carry on communicating with everybody, all the other stakeholders, your suppliers and your staff and all the rest of it in a manner that also addresses their needs. So that's the challenge of it. Because at a certain stage, you're going to want to be like, I don't want to talk to any of these people. Hey,
I have this sick feeling in my stomach right here that doesn't go away.
Where's my money, man? Like, or hey, I need this and I need that, and this is what I want out of it. And this is why I think a lot of people struggle so much managing their staff, because your staff have got heaps of needs. You know, they're human beings, and good staff will articulate their needs to you, and that's a blessing, you know. But that can be really scary for business owners, because okay, now the staff's telling me they need this stuff, and I don't want to deal with it because, man, I need all kinds of stuff too.
Yeah, who's going to listen to what I need?
Yeah, and who's going to listen to what I need? Exactly. So that can be a really scary thing. But again, we need to kind of understand, all right, well, if my staff can articulate their needs to me, that's a great thing, right? Because I want to have staff for a long time. Like, I don't want to be hiring and firing staff all the time. That's just expensive and bad for business. So you got to find those silver linings. You got to hunt for those silver linings. I mean, like, yeah, I'm really stressed out because the staff need all this stuff from me. But the silver lining is they're here
that they want something from me.
You know. But yeah, it's a lot to manage.
What are some of the, like, you manage? Well, the name for anyone that's listening is Modern Cafeteria. It's in Caringbah. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook and all those places. I can't fucking wait to come see you when I come to Australia in October. But you have opened Modern Cafeteria with your stunning, fabulous partner, Giovanna Banda, who I can't wait to have on the podcast. And shout out to you, Giovanna. I know that you listen to this podcast, and I hope you know how big a fan I am of you. But you guys have opened it. This is Giovanna's fourth shop?
Yeah, this is her fourth shop, I think. Yeah, she's good. Yeah.
And your first, right?
Yeah.
And what are the wins that you've had so far? Like, is it, you know, have there been, it's been a year yet? Has it been a year?
No, it's been 8.
It's got to be close though. Yeah.
It'll be almost 9 months soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God, eight quickly, hasn't it?
Months. So yeah, it's gone fairly fast. It's good. I'm excited that we're coming up on a year in business, and I'll be even more excited when we come up on 2 years in the business and 3, 4, 5, because I feel like, you know, the longer we stay there, the more chance we have of surviving.
Yeah.
and I'm conscious that things need to be properly taken care of in the beginning of any business. We need to work hard for the next couple of years in creating a good culture inside the company, and
getting a rhythm.
Yeah, basically, having that direct customer base, people who are coming in daily, just continuing to build that. So that's something that is, I'm kind of looking forward to continuing to do, but it is a lot of hard work. But I got to look forward to doing it because this is the creation of the company, and you've it over time. Yeah. So we're having wins in that we've got a good team. We've managed to get staff who we trust and we like and we believe can do the job. We've got a fairly varied team of people, with some kind of full-time and casual staff,
Mm-hmm.
And
who are lucky enough to get trained by you.
Yeah, well, most of them are cooks, so but they lucky get trained enough by to Giovanna. Work with me on a fairly daily basis, and have to listen to like my music all the time. But I play music that some of them like.
Are you still DJing?
No, I haven't DJed in a while. Hey, I'd like to DJ, but I don't really have the time. But I will do DJ again. I constantly think about DJing again.
Putting on your own parties?
Yeah, I would do my own parties or something.
Yeah. You still got all your records?
Yeah, I still got all my records.
Because you still DJ, like that's how you DJ, isn't it? On vinyl, not on CDJs?
No, I DJ on CDJ as well. I DJ'd on, yeah, I own like the CDJs as well as the vinyl turntables.
Look at you.
Yeah, I would play on off MP3s or anything. Really, like to get the music, I would play whatever format it's on. But I like it all. Like
where did you DJ
records? Old 45 RPM, 7-inch singles, or people playing using Serato or any of that kind of software. It's all got its place. It just depends.
Where was the last place you DJ'd?
The last place I DJ'd? I don't know. I think
in Australia? Or have you DJ'd out of the country when you used to go to Origin or anything like that?
Before I went to Origin, before I was buying coffee for Campos Coffee, I traveled to Colombia twice.
Play parties there?
And I DJ'd in Colombia both times. I played parties in Bogota. And I think we just played in Bogota.
What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. It was pretty crazy, hey. I thought I was going to get in a lot of trouble sometimes because, there was situations with football hooligans and things.
And you always end up in situations.
Yeah. I know. Well,
they find you
there. No, I've got Colombian friends in Australia who have been my friends for the last 15 years or so. And so the first time I went to Colombia was with a friend of mine in 2007. And he said he was going to Colombia for 3 months to stay with his family and do some travel around Colombia. And he said I should go over with him for a few weeks. So I'd always wanted to go to Colombia since I was a teenager. I'd wanted to go to Colombia. It seemed like a really interesting and exotic place to me. And I'd read books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez and stuff. So I was like, I want to go to Colombia. I'd seen the 1994 World Cup with Carlos Valderrama. I was like, I want to go to this country since I was young. So, and I'd traveled in South America in Chile and Peru and Bolivia when I was 18. So I said, I'll come over. And I went to Colombia for a month. And we had both been DJing together. He used to sell records and he'd sell me records. That's how I knew him. And then we used to DJ shows together. So another Colombian friend of mine who was also from Cali said, oh, you should call up this friend of mine in Bogota and, you know, he'll tell you where to go out partying and maybe you can DJ. So we called this guy and he said, yeah, we were playing reggae music mainly and like dancehall,
right?
Reggaeton and that kind of thing. And so we met these guys and they're like, yeah, you should grab your records and come and DJ at these bars. So we went to like 3 or 4 bars and we DJ'd. Yeah, it was fun. It was exciting.
I can imagine.
We went to some pretty crazy places, but we had a lot of fun. Yeah, it was an eye-opening experience for me because, you know, this was like, you know, it was a little bit edgy. But
what was edgy about it? In on the music side or just the cultural side? What was edgy?
Yeah, like the metal detector, getting metal detected when we would go into the bars or the clubs, like places that we DJ'd where there was like a certain criminal element in patronage, basically. Like, you know,
well, it's fucking Colombia.
Bars and clubs where gangsters, like low-level gangsters, you know, like street
thugs,
gangsters hung out, you know, giving like fairly stern advice by people on my personal security. Mm-hmm. You know, it was just a bit eye-opening, but it was thoroughly enjoyable. And, you know, I traveled around the country, both then and in 2008. And in 2008, I DJ'd at a couple of smaller parties because then I met some other people there. And I formed quite a few friendships there. And, so that was before I'd gone to get involved with coffee. On the first trip, I had actually done some networking and met up with people from the FNC. And I'd gone and visited some farms and I'd done some cupping at an FNC lab in Tolima, in Ibagué.
FNC is the governing, correct me if I'm wrong, the governing coffee federation in Colombia, right?
Yeah, it's the Colombian Coffee Farmers Federation.
Yeah. And they're pretty much got a stronghold, or they run the show down there, don't they? Down there?
Yeah, the FNC has a lot of power in the Colombian industry.
So when did you go to Origin for the first time?
So my first Origin trip, so not including these trips. I mean, I suppose that trip in 2007 was kind of, you know, like I'd gone to Origin, I'd visited coffee farms, and I was like, okay, but it was on my own coin.
Yeah, you weren't buying for anybody at that point, were you?
I wasn't buying for anyone, you know. I was just like, hi, I'm this guy, I'm this barista. You know, people were like, okay, cool.
That's fun. Do you want to pick
coffee farms and we'll cup some coffees with you. And then we're going to take you to meet these other people who are baristas. And you can show them like latte art and stuff. Because the people I met are from FNC. And FNC owns Juan Valdez. So, you know, Colombian coffee people from farm right through to barista level are keen to network with people from all over the world, whether you're a barista or a buyer. Yeah. I think you'll find someone who's like, yeah, I want to talk with you, because they'd love to sell more lattes and flat whites to people in Colombia and all around the world where they have their shops, just like as much as they'd love to sell more bags of green coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, my first Origin trip for Campos Coffee was in 2011, I believe, the end of 2011. We went to Campos.
How did you pivot from, because you were the head barista at Campos for ages, and then you pivoted into green bean buying. How did you do that? Because at that time I was living in LA. I'm pretty sure I had pivoted for a minute. I'd moved out of the Australian coffee industry, was living in Los Angeles to do my music career, and was working in coffee there at the same time. And that's when you started. 2009 I did that. That was my first long-term trip in LA. And around that time was when you were pivoting, right?
Yes.
How'd you do that?
Well, in I think around 2010, I decided I wanted to start my own cafe.
Okay.
It was like 2009, 2010. I was planning on starting my own cafe. And I discussed this with Will, the owner of Campos. I said, look, I want to leave Campos and I want to start my own cafe. And I was planning towards it. So I was putting together a business plan. I was going to go into partnership with my father. He was going to provide some of the money to start the thing up. And he was pretty keen to get involved because, you know, he's an investor and, you know, I think he thought it was a good investment. And he's a foodie, right? He's a foodie and he likes great coffee. I mean, my kind of love of coffee has come through my parents largely. Anyway, I had an accident in 2010. And it kind of knocked me around a bit. You know, it was traumatic. So the cafe plans were on the back burner. And I was working bar at Campos. Once I got back on my feet, I had an accident. I got bitten by a shark, a reef shark on my face. So it was a bit of a weird accident.
Dude, I remember when it happened. I found out about it on the news in LA.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there you go.
I remember I saw it. I was in my apartment in LA and I saw it on the news. I'm like, wait, surely there can't be two Ben Demdens in the world.
Yeah.
Like it's not a usual name. That can't fucking be my Ben Demden, my friend.
Yeah.
You just don't ever think of your friends getting bitten in the face by a shark.
You don't really. You don't think of yourself getting bitten in the face by a shark.
Where were you when it happened?
That was in Solomon Islands.
Yeah.
In Western Province, Solomon Islands. Yeah, so in a pretty remote.
Glad I am that you recovered from that.
Me too.
Yes.
And it was traumatic, and it was traumatic because this situation happened where this was actually in the newspapers.
Yeah.
And you know, someone along the way had leaked this story to Australian media, and then it had got out before I'd managed to inform, you know, family and friends.
Fuck.
I was okay, right? So for example, the first thing I heard, I was in Honiara, the capital, and people were saying to me, okay, this is in the Australian newspaper, so you need to call your family or anyone who you need to call now. And I called my mum and I called my boss, and my boss was like, hey, wow, we're just reading about it in the newspapers. We thought you were dead, kind of thing. So that was really traumatic, you know, because a lot of people were really upset by that. And I had no control over this narrative, you know. Once a newspaper had a story like this, it's like man's life hangs in the balance. And what I suffered was a flesh wound. You know,
but of course he got bitten in the face by a shark. You know, it's like, and it's it's like Australian, right? Yeah. It's super dramatic. Over here, it was like Australian man gets bitten in the face by a shark. So it's one of those things where everyone's like, shit, another big thing that happens to Australians with really dangerous animals in Australia.
Exactly.
Fuck.
Yeah. So after that,
it changes you though.
Well,
you changed into a completely different person.
Yeah, like I kind of struggled with how that affected me, and like it was a good struggle. I think it was a struggle that I needed to have in my life, and it just kind of made me, want to explore new things in my life, and take a different direction. So at this stage, I was working bar.
Where were you working at that point?
I was working bar at Newtown, in Campus Coffee in Newtown. Mm-hmm. And, Will was starting to buy coffee, or get more interest in his green coffee. He was buying significant quantities of green coffee from importers. He wanted to start buying coffee directly. He was cupping coffee more frequently, and he was encouraging people in his team to cup more frequently. I'd been involved in cupping coffees with him from probably, I started cupping coffee probably around 2007, 2008. Infrequently, like once a week kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Or maybe once every couple of weeks. And then I started to try and cup coffees more frequently. I started to understand the value in cupping. And Will proposed to me that I become involved in sourcing green coffee with him, because he wanted to source green coffee, but he needed somebody to help him with it. And as I had been to Colombia already, I kind of knew, like, I think he was impressed that I went to Colombia on holiday. He was like, wow, this dude just like
fucks off and goes anywhere.
Colombia and like went and met these dudes and cut coffee and went to a farm. And I was like, yeah, like we were over there, like they're nice people, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I'd been in Latin America before, I felt comfortable there. My Spanish is good. I felt like, okay, this is great. So he was like, you could go to Colombia and organize something there. So I thought about it. Like, I was like, hey, I'm going to have to think about this. Because I was really thinking about doing the cafe, and I was really thinking about setting myself up as a business person, and becoming an entrepreneur. So that was my plan, and I felt like that was the best thing for me to do. But after the accident, I wasn't sure if that was the best thing. Because I realized I still kind of didn't know who I was.
Oh, yeah. And
so I had to kind of spend some more time working on me, right? And so I appreciated that, well, if I'm working on me, I'm not going to be able to spend so much time working on a business. Or if I'm working on a business, I'm not going to be able to spend so much time working on me. So I thought about it for like 5 minutes, and like the next day I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to do it. Let's go. Like,
I'm going to Colombia again.
But I was like, yep, let's do this. Like, let's go. He was like, okay, we're going to go to Kenya. And so he sent me to Kenya.
Did you go on your own the first time?
No, I went with Raf Budkowski, his partner at the time, his business partner at Campus Coffee. So yeah, that was a really fun trip, and it was a great trip because, well, I got to learn about all this stuff. Like, I'd kind of done my homework, from the time of taking this job on, and worked out, okay, this is how it all works. And I had some kind of knowledge of it before. I mean, I'd roasted coffee before, and I knew a bit about what happened to green coffee, in its journey from cherry. But there I got to go to Kenya and see, okay, this is how they do it, at least in Kenya. So that was an awesome trip. Like, that was just like the best experience of my whole life, because I was like, oh my God, I'm in this beautiful place where all these people are producing this beautiful tasting coffee, and I'm here and they're showing me how they do it. So it was a pretty cool experience. And one that solidified to me that, yes, this was totally what I was going to do forever. Yeah. I was going to be 100% committed to working in coffee in some form. And from there, other trips followed. The next trip was to Colombia, where we started working with Caravella Coffee. It was known as Vermax back then. So yeah, that was kind of how that started.
What was the sea around then?
What was the sea around then? I think the sea around then it was a bit different than what it is now. It was about 170. We'd have to look back, but 2011 the sea went pretty high. Like the sea went up to like $2 in 2011.
You know what it's at the moment, right?
Yeah, it's like below $1.
Below $1, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for you on that. I was going to give Christopher Ferran a call and ask him about this today, and then I thought I'll just ask Ben on the podcast. Something that's confusing me about this, I guess, this clusterfuck that is the sea at the moment. So I've definitely learned a lot since Mark Dundon's article came out, and I've been asking a bunch of questions and been learning a lot more about the sea, and we're trying to raise awareness about direct relationships with farmers and whatnot. I saw somebody ask a question on Instagram: why do we care about what the sea is in the specialty market if what we're doing is actually building relationships with the farmers? And Christopher Ferran turned around and said, well, because the specialty market is so small compared to the sea. Yeah. What I'm wondering is, if the sea collapses, if it can, I don't even know if that's a possibility. Like, let's say the sea goes so low that most farmers decide to walk away from growing coffee, and that's happening now. I'm hearing a lot of that happening in Colombia, in Guatemala. People just deciding not to pick their cherries and have decided to plant something else next harvest. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that we can onboard enough people into specialty if they decide to abandon commodity crops? And are they planting crops to be sold on the commodity market because they don't know how to farm specialty grade coffee? Or has it in the past just been more profitable to do commodity coffee?
Well, it depends who we're talking about, I suppose. Like if we're talking about a smallholder farmer and their decisions, or if we're talking about like a larger company that buys green coffee and trades in green coffee, or larger estates. Mm-hmm. But I think for the majority of smallholder coffee farmers in the world, they don't have the knowledge to grow specialty effectively. On the whole, I think the more an increase in knowledge in a smallholder farmer level would make a big difference. But obviously there's millions of smallholder farmers worldwide who need more knowledge. Not just on actually farming and farming practices, but also on managing their businesses and making sure that they don't go broke because of making poor decisions, just like cafe owners, right? So making sure that they understand the ins and outs of their small business, essentially, which indeed a lot don't have the education to do that at this stage. So that's a major crisis for these guys.
Is it really? Is that really something that? And I'm sure it shouldn't surprise me, just because these are poorer countries that, I don't know where I expected that they would magically get this education from. It's just naive on my perspective. But again, I'm learning a lot about this through the conversations I'm having on the podcast. And poor form on my behalf, having been in the industry for 17 years or whatever it is, and not knowing this. Like, I've never had a trip to Origin, and I don't know very many farmers. I'm starting to get to know them because of this podcast, but it really is quite eye-opening to realize, they don't just need to be learning how to grow better coffee. John Allen from Onyx Coffee Lab was on the podcast a couple of days ago, and we were talking about possibly finding some way to help get some entrepreneurial education to these guys, to help them learn how to market their businesses better over here in the States and in Australia and Asia and Europe and Middle East and whatever. These are it's the kind of thing where it's definitely something Mapper Forward can get involved in and try and find a way, if we can find some funding, so that we can start taking Jeff Dillon, who is the coffee accountant, take him over and put together some workshops and around how to handle your finances, and some workshops around building a brand and some business education and how to map a business and all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering, I honestly, Ben, I didn't realize that there was that need out there.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, you touch on a lot of important things that a smallholder coffee farmer needs essentially to survive. So yeah, they need the knowledge for farming practices, obviously. And this is, and they need updates on old knowledge, because, this isn't a static thing, like being a farmer now is different. Being a farmer in Tolima, Colombia is different now than it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's increasingly changing at a faster rate. Well, as we see, the effects of climate change is a big example.
Technology as well.
Technological changes in public policy, at a government level, changes in the market. Guys are ticking along for years going, yeah, we're growing, fair trade certified organic to sell to whatever price that buyers in Germany, until those buyers might change their preference and go for a higher price coffee, or maybe they go for a lower price coffee. It's there's a lot for a farmer to know to stay competitive and to market as well. Like marketing, they need, how do they do that effectively? And how do they market effectively to guys in other countries? Like, it's really hard. So they, on the whole, they work with larger organizations, whether they're coffee exporters or, big and small, or whether they're cooperatives. That's generally what they do. But they mightn't have a lot of choice on who they work with to do that. They might just have to work with whoever's there. So they're kind of at the mercy of that link. But yeah, there's a lot of people making good profits out of commodity coffee too. And there's nothing to say that commodity coffee can't be profitable.
Do you have to buy at the sea? Do you have to sell at the sea if you're selling commodity coffee?
I'm not entirely sure, but it's more to do with how futures are bought and sold. So
can you tell me some more about that?
Well, it's coffee futures are bought and sold by speculators, essentially.
Okay.
So, for example, the C price before Donald Trump came into power, the C price went up because Wall Street investors were pulling money out of Wall Street. They were pulling money out of the US. They were worried about, what effect this would have, if Donald Trump became president, what it would have on the markets. So they were putting their money into high value commodities, of which coffee futures are. So people were throwing money into coffee's futures and maybe into copper or other
Oil,
high value,
whatever.
easily traded commodities and taking it out of maybe US real estate. So that's great until, okay, now I'm going
They want the money back.
Get all that money back out of there. So it's just it's part of how these guys make their money, right?
It's an elastic band effect, isn't it? Like they can only stretch it so far and then it flicks back. Does the market then react to the fact that it's dropping? Do you think that that's what's causing it?
Oh, in currently?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people are buying and selling, coffee futures at a much lower price now than they were, when the C price was
Isn't this
70. I don't think this is ever. In the 90s, the price collapsed.
Oh, did it?
I think
when it collapsed, what does collapsed mean exactly?
What did it go down to? Like 40 cents or maybe a bit higher.
In the 90s?
In the late 90s. And this was the beginning for many people to start to look seriously at paying more for coffee as being a good thing, right? That we're going to pay more for this coffee and you should want to pay more for this coffee.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when people like, Susie Spindler and George Howell and these guys saw that there was a need for things like Cup of Excellence. So that this idea that farmers who were growing quality would receive a premium on top of the price, because the base price for coffee was basically so far below cost of production that it was completely pointless to be involved in farming coffee as a business, unless you were growing a high quality specialty coffee, and then you could demand a price premium from your buyer and go, well, this is a 90-point coffee, or this is an 86-point coffee. I demand a price premium, which the buyer would pay, because these buyers were in the market of buying, roasting and selling specialty coffee, or buying and then trading on against specialty coffee. So people need to have a cold, sober look at what they're paying for their green coffee. Again, that's the thing. But at the end of the day, the reasons for the C price being at, whatever it is, 96 cents or whatever it is currently, are not because of, specialty coffee roasters in US or Australia. They have little to do with that at all, and it's more to do with what happens in origin countries like Brazil and Colombia, and the likes of investors and speculators and multinational corporations as well. So there's the problem is, though, the C price is constantly a reference, and I mean, I think I saw the same comment as you. Why are we worried about the C price when we're not buying on the C price? But yeah, the commodity coffee, which is what is mostly drunk around the world, is traded on the C price, and we can't escape the C price because it's like we're in a dinghy next to a container liner. You can't not feel the effects of that container liner. And people constantly refer to the C price. And big companies who buy specialty buy coffees that are lower priced coffees as well, because they need to.
Is that
because they want to keep their costs
line?
low as well?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for their bottom line. Or they have to charge their customers more for a cup of coffee, and then they're more competitive, or then they're less competitive, so then they lose customers, so they're afraid to raise their prices. I mean, people battle pretty hard to keep their prices low. You know, no business owner likes to raise their prices. Sure, we need that money, but you don't want to lose customers when you raise your prices. Like, it's a pretty frightening, you know, thing to do as a business owner. Be like, okay, I'm going to raise the prices on this. Am I going to lose all these customers? Even though I know I have to raise prices, and there's some guy who's over the road who's selling, and it's cheaper than mine by a little bit, and people flock to it. You know, so people, you know, people are obviously reluctant to raise prices, but you know, we should.
Yeah, because I mean, I can't imagine that there are any farmers out there that are actually going to be making any money when they're selling their coffee at 96 cents per pound when it's costing them a lot more than that to produce it.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to do in contracts.
No, it doesn't make any sense, and I think I'm not 100% sure why, but I believe that the reasons behind this are that Brazil's had a very large crop, or it's declared that it's had a bumper crop, and that the US dollar is quite high versus the Brazilian currency and other currencies in the world. But I couldn't, you know, I'm not a...
Is Brazil the highest?
But it kind of matters.
Is Brazil the highest coffee?
But as far as how much we... Sorry?
Is Brazil the highest coffee producing country in the world?
Yeah, Brazil's the largest producer.
Do they pretty much set the trends because of that? Do they pretty much set the trends because of that? Sorry, let me say that better. Do they pretty much... what happens in Brazil sets a lot of the tone of the direction that the market's moving in?
Absolutely. Yeah, if Brazil has a bumper crop, you know, the seed price will be lower.
Why?
Because there's more coffee on the market.
It's too much.
It's just more coffee available. It's just simple supply and demand. So it can be manipulated.
Yeah,
the Brazilians can manipulate this, right?
Yeah. Look, you know, I heard stories of where they'd gone
manipulated.
Say again.
The seed price for sure. Like, you know, it's like people are trying to manipulate it. Like, it's in interest for some people to have it lower. For some people, it's in their interest to have it higher. There's competing forces trying to manipulate this price. So somebody might make a statement and they say, you know, there's going to be frosts expected in, you know, in Sao Paulo, in this area, and big growing areas of Brazil. And the price starts going up because people are worried that there's not going to be as big a harvest because plants are going to die. And then maybe a month later come out and say, wow, the price wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Or we don't think it's going to be as bad as they said originally. You know, I mean, it can be manipulated.
Can that not be considered price fixing?
Short-term gains, like, you know, people are involved in, like, this is their job, right?
Yeah.
Dedicated at it.
Can that not be considered price fixing if it's the right person that's saying it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you go about, like, proving that people are you know, acting in an illegal or an unethical manner in that regards. And I'm not entirely sure what the legality is around that kind of stuff. But
you heard what happened with Elon Musk and that?
I mean, if you go and talk to coffee farmers, they'll tell you all kinds of stuff about why the seed price is what it is.
Really?
Like guys in Colombia, I meet guys in Colombia who will say to me, oh, no, the Colombian president, he works out the seed price every day.
What?
And then other people will be like, no, Donald Trump decides the seed price. So there's all kinds of ignorance and murkiness around this stuff. You know, but who knows how these prices are really arrived at.
Yeah. You heard about what happened with Elon Musk last week and his hot water with regards to price fixing?
Oh yeah, I did read it. That he was accused and
because of a tweet.
Yeah. Well, see, people are paying attention, and there's people there looking at all kinds of information, trying to gather some data to speculate accordingly.
Hey,
it's fair game.
It's fair game, and he's quite distraught over the whole thing because, by accounts of his article in the New York Times, he was just excited about some news that he'd had and tweeted about it and didn't think anything of it.
Forgot that he was Elon Musk for a second.
But you can understand how it would happen, right? He should have known better, but we're in business. So we know when something that we've been working on for ages happens, you just kind of want to get on Facebook and tell everyone, or you want to get on Instagram and tell everyone your great news because, you just get excited about it. And so just because he's Elon Musk, it doesn't mean he's not excited about this thing he's been fucking working on forever. And yes, the money came through with the Saudis. So, woohoo, we're going to get to be able to take Tesla private. And so, he goes and says it and doesn't realize that he's fucking jacked the price of Tesla by crazy numbers. And, he's in fucking big trouble. People talking about jail time and shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is stuff that stuff that people stand to make or lose a lot of money on.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming back to smallholder coffee farmers and I suppose what is needed for them to produce a larger percentage of their crops to be specialty, or for them to achieve better prices, and for us to not have to be concerned for the C price. It's a leap of faith that's needed by farmers. Currently, it's a massive ask. And honestly, if I was in Peru talking to coffee farmers, or in Tanzania talking to coffee farmers, right now, what I'm asking them for is a massive leap of faith, basically. And that's something that, I suppose coffee roasters need to understand, that if you're going to do this and you're going to ask these coffee farmers for this leap of faith and for them to commit to something that is going to require more money and more effort on their part and be risky on their part, coffee roasters need to make that leap of faith together with them, basically, and leap together. It's like we're jumping off this cliff, guys. We hope the parachute opens. We've designed it so that it works, but the relationship, the faith in that relationship needs to be strong, because the coffee roaster might sometimes need to pay a price for something that they don't think they want to pay because it's not the quality that they expect. And the coffee farmer might find themselves in a situation where, wow, the C price has gone really high.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in this relationship anymore because I could sell it to anybody and make more money. I don't even put any effort in and make more money. But they have to honor the contract, honor the relationship. So yeah, it's a leap of faith for the coffee farmer. It's but you know, when they make that leap, you can't be like not on the other side of the gap to catch them. You know, like you've got to be there, like, okay, let's go. And that could, you know, that could be expensive for the coffee roaster. You know, so the coffee roasters need to be aware of this, and it needs to be planned for a long term.
If Ben, where do you think the supply chain is broken from the back end? Is it different in different origins, or is there like a couple of things that are broken everywhere?
I think, yeah, there's different problems or different things that need fixing in different origins. I think traceability is still something that we need more of, you know, at a buying country level. I think people should be seeking greater traceability still. Like, I know everyone's banging on about their traceability.
Yeah.
And we like to talk about the traceability of our most traceable coffees, or our coffees where we were there and we got photos shaking coffee farmers' hands, or coffees that are particularly good coffees or spectacular coffees or different coffees. But I think traceability on all of the coffees shouldn't be overlooked. And getting stuck into the nitty-gritty of that is really important. So
does it fall into the too hard basket at the moment?
I think it does for a lot of people, and I think it does for a lot of people, but I also think there's a lot of people who are kind of working at it, but it just takes a long time. And I think there's also people who just don't want to do it because they don't necessarily believe in it or agree with it. They don't think they should have to.
How so? Like for anyone that this is the first episode of the podcast they're listening to, just define traceability and what we mean by traceability.
We mean that we can see with transparency who's produced the coffees. We should be able to see where those coffees are milled and who's basically exporting those coffees. If we're buying them from an importer, or if we're buying them from an exporter, or if we're buying, you know, roasted coffee from a coffee roaster, who they're getting them from. Then we want to know, okay, prices that are being paid.
Yep.
Now, a lot of people now are starting to put out their transparency reports, and they're saying, okay, these are the coffees that I'm buying, and this is how much I'm paying for them. And I think that's really good, and I really like to see that, and I want to see more people doing that, and I want to do that when I'm able to do that. I think it's great, and I think we're going to see more people doing it. And I do think people are really interested in it, and I think we need to raise awareness around that kind of thing.
Before you go on there, Ben, if anyone who just heard what Ben said is listening to this podcast and hasn't listened to any of them before, listen to the episode before this with John Allen, and he talks in depth about how Onyx Coffee went about doing that, and the fears that they experience in going into that, and the flow-on effects, positive and negative, that they saw from going public about, you know, we bought our coffee at $5.50 a pound and we're selling it at $20. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, Ben, but I think it's important that if anyone wants to know, if anyone is thinking about doing that and doesn't know what kind of effect it's going to have on their business, go listen to the episode that I did with John Allen, because he went into it at depth and they saw nothing but positives from it. And they've been doing it for quite a while now, and they're seeing really great results from it. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I think, I think it's really scary for people. And when we start to kind of reveal some of that back end to the end consumer, it's super uncomfortable because we don't know how they're going to take it. And we're exposing, like, we're being super vulnerable. But I think for coffee roasters and businesses where they're kind of, that's what they want to do, like that's important to them, I feel like it's going to be rewarding because they will have fulfilled that need to be transparent. And there's going to be people out there who are not going to do it and they don't want to do it, and I don't think they should have to do it.
No, you're right. You're right.
It's you know, we might get to a stage where someone says you have to do it, but people will go, okay, well, they don't do it then. So they'll have to mount a defense on why they don't do it to a certain segment of the public. And there's also a segment of the public that just doesn't care anyway.
Look, I think it's one of those things of people, you know, if you're going to be doing it, you're not really doing it for the public. You're doing it for the community, the coffee community, the people who are,
you're doing it for yourself, you know.
Yeah,
you're doing
the public gives zero fucks.
Be transparent. You want to, you want people to be able to scrutinize you, and you want to be able to go, yeah, go ahead, you know, like, here it is. It's on my website. Check it out. Yeah. Like, and, you know, that might be part of your marketing, you know, like, hey, we actually different from these guys because, you know, we care.
It's going to be a mark of
to us, and I think people will respond to that. You know, not everyone will, but they will, and you know, and hopefully we see kind of a greater depth in that, and people start to reveal not just what they paid for the coffee, but what the farmer who grew it was paid, so what they received.
And the pickers.
And yeah, we'll be able to see all kinds of things. And it is going to be eye-opening for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, we're in a situation, you know, because of how the world economy works, where coffee-producing countries poorer countries, because cost of production is kept lower because of the fact that these are poorer people.
Yeah,
you know, they're not earning the same kind of money that we are earning. You know, and that kind of underpins much of the world economy. And so a lot of people, particularly at the bigger end of town, are not going to want to borrow, but because they're going to be like, yeah, that's the whole reason we go there for that. It's because it's cheap.
Yep. We want the price to stay as low as possible because my bottom line is all I give a fuck about. Like, ethics is not something that's important to me. Fuck off and talk to the people who want hugs and want to sing Kumbaya while they're holding hands.
Yeah. So... yeah, it's like it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting what happens, and I think a lot of coffee roasters are going to kind of struggle with their identities, maybe.
Yeah, Mark was saying how they considered, he said this publicly, so on the podcast, so I can repeat it. You know, he was talking about how they, given that there's a race to the bottom, like, you know, particularly in Australia, people are trying to save money and pinching pennies to you know, to boost their margins because they're operating on like 3% and 1.5% is what they're operating on their net profits at the moment. And so, you know, one quick way to fix that is to just buy cheaper coffee because, you know, people are drinking cappuccinos with 2 sugars. They're not going to notice a drop in coffee if it's like, you know, $5 a kilo. People, that's a mindset anyway. And so he found that very...
And you can get great coffees that are at you know, low price. You can get great coffees there. Just because they're low price doesn't mean they're not necessarily
right. Absolutely. And just, you know, again, you know, paying $100 a pound for a gesha doesn't mean that it tastes any better. It just means the demand is higher for that coffee, and that's what it costs, you know. It doesn't mean it's terrible. It just means, you know, it at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to the demand and the competitiveness to have that coffee, is what plays a big role in the price of that coffee. But what Mark was saying was they were considering not doing a wholesale program because it was just too hard to convince people to pay the farmers well for what they were producing, because what he's trying to do with his supply chain is ensure that it exists into the future. That's the relationships he's building with the farmers, is so that he can ensure that he has a business in 10 years.
Yeah. And that the farmers have a business in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, long-term thinking is what is, you know, required. And I mean, it's been really positive to hear that kind of stuff. You know, when Mark Dundon said this is the lowest we pay for green coffee and we aspire to pay more, that was the first time I'd heard anyone publicly speak about aspiring to pay more for green coffee in a few years. So that was good. I think people kind of forgot about that a little bit. Quality and price and how they converge is a really big topic, and it's something that I think has been kind of passed over a bit too quickly. So people just assume that great quality coffee gets a good price, or that these people, you know, who are growing this good quality coffee are receiving a good price because, well, the coffee's good, right? And I'm paying, you know, whatever, $3 or $4, $5 for a cappuccino, but that's not always the case. So yeah, that's super positive. I mean, congratulations to Mark and for doing what he's doing, and you know,
yeah, everyone that's doing what he's doing. I hope more people follow
suit. He's good for sticking to his guns with that kind of stuff. You know, the industry maybe goes full circle, or there's, you know, when a new generation comes into the industry, we need to remind ourselves of things that were, you know, battles that were fought by previous generations in the industry. And one of the founding things of people like you know, coffee roasters out of Seattle and kind of Pacific Northwest USA 20 years ago was paying good money for good coffee, and working strong relationships with smallholder coffee farmers to achieve that end. And I think people kind of forgot about it maybe to a certain extent, or the message gets kind of watered down, or it gets confused, or people think, oh, it's all good out there in the coffee lands, because there's a lot of focus on fantastic coffees, which are receiving fantastic prices, but they, like you said earlier, are a tiny percentage, not just of specialty, but of, you know, the whole industry of coffee. They're just a small percentage. And it's an important issue for the future of coffee, for the future of specialty coffee.
It's not something we can think about in 2 years from now, right? This is a massive problem now.
Well, I think it's a wake up when the C price goes below $1, right? Like, and we can go, yeah, but we're divorced from that. But the people we work with aren't divorced from that, because if we say, okay, I'm not buying their coffees this year because my threshold for these coffees is that they're 84s and they're all 82s. So we can't get them this year. And whether that's just you buying coffee from some guy you buy coffee on year in, year out on a handshake, or whether you've got a contract that stipulates you don't have to accept the coffees that are below 84. What's this guy going to do with it? He's going to take it, sell it on the market. So, like, that's always hanging over him if that's part of your call with him. And there's not many coffee roasters out there who are like, yeah, okay, I want to take that $1 million of coffee that is for $1 million that is, you know, below the standard that I want it to be. Okay, so what are you going to do? Well, I put it in my blend, but my blend quality goes down.
Yeah.
It's a major drama for your business, right?
Yeah.
Like, trust me, any other suppliers, it's the same way. I don't want to buy bad spinach from my wholesaler because, you know, bad weather has delivered bad spinach. I'm going to want to get some better spinach from someone else, or not buy spinach, or pay less for that spinach. And
coffee is
so,
just another agricultural product, but
I mean, you know, that's not to say that we shouldn't extend our traceability or our desire to have good relationships with suppliers through thick and thin. We should probably do that with all the things we get, right?
Correct.
You know, because they're hurting too. That guy growing spinach is hurting too. You know, in places like food's a big issue. Food's a big issue in Australia. You know,
well, especially now with the
guys
drought.
are going broke on the land here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Australia is not a good country to be a food producer in. The cost of the cost of producing, you know, fruit and veg, if you're producing anywhere near Sydney CBD, like if you're producing within a 50-kilometre radius of Sydney CBD, your overheads on producing that are huge. But yet people in Sydney CBD need fresh fruit and vegetables, and they can't truck it all in from Western New South Wales or from Queensland or from Victoria. I mean, you know, there's big issues that we've got to think about in the whole food supply chain, sustainable production of food. It's a big drama. I think, you know, I don't think we'd really do much of a job handling.
Do you remember the year? Do you remember the year that bananas went to $150 a box?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? That was before I started working at Campos. That was the year before I started working at Campos, but I was working at Bill's at the time. And the most the signature dish at Bill's was the ricotta hotcakes, which has a full banana on every dish. But we had to put signs on the front door saying no bananas held on premises.
Yeah.
After someone tried to break in and steal boxes of bananas. Our bananas went missing.
Yeah, wow.
And so, you know, that's how shit goes crazy in Sydney when there's a problem with one produce item because the supply chain's disrupted.
Yeah.
It's such a foodie town.
And people want what they want, and they expect it. I mean, we had similar situation with avocados, and avocado prices went up, and you know, cafes had to pull them off the menu, or they had to charge a lot of money for dishes with a lot of avocado in them, or they just had to absorb that cost and try and make it back elsewhere. And a lot of people just absorb the cost. And some people will explain to their customers that they weren't going to have avocado dishes. You know, when we set this cafe up, I didn't put anything on the menu that had to have avocado on it. And I tentatively, you know, included a bit of guacamole in some dishes, probably 6
Add it when the price goes down.
Because people have, you know, because the supply of avocados has improved in Australia because people have actually been investing in growing avocados since the last 10 years, and we're starting to see greater supply of avocados. So these farmers who were like, yeah, I'm gonna capitalize on avocado shortage in Australia, are educated farmers with access to the internet and resources to help them decide what they're going to invest in. So they're at an advantage to an avocado grower in Peru or Colombia, and both of those countries are growing house avocados for export. And like you said, coffee farmers are going, I'm quitting coffee to grow avocados. But that's, that's the reality. I mean, look, to coffee farmers, I would never tell them to not grow avocados either. I would say, yeah, you should grow some avocados as well as coffee. And maybe you should produce something else like honey that you can kind of value add to, or make it into a niche product. And again, that's part of their education on how to be smarter business people, how to be smarter entrepreneurs. And there's plenty of smart entrepreneurial small scale coffee farmers out there in countries like Colombia, who work hard at it. So I suppose it's can we enable these guys and put them in positions where they can have greater influence over other people in their communities?
Yeah.
And the way I do that is I work through export companies to buy the raw coffee that we buy from places like Colombia, who I believe provide a platform for that kind of thing to happen, or enable smallholder coffee farmers by giving them knowledge on farming and how to run their businesses and such. Because it's not something that I'm able to effectively give coffee farmers. I can give them my thoughts.
Yep.
But that's all.
You've definitely got my mind ticking about what we can do to bring the right people together to perhaps, if we can get some funding, maybe do a Kickstarter or something, and start to get some funding together and put the right people together to perhaps go and run some workshops in different countries that might need them, with people who speak the language, and we can take over some financial knowledge and help with branding and things like that, help them build relationships over here that can help get their coffees sold, and teach them about how from the back end we could perhaps build a network of people here that are looking for different kinds of coffees that they do want to establish direct relationships with. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but I'm sure that there's some shit that we can do to help with that without the idea of being saviors or anything like that. It's if the education's needed, then perhaps there's something that we can do to find the right people that can give it to them.
Yeah. Well, there is a definite need for it, and there's people who are operating in that capacity, but yeah, there's always a need for more, I think.
Yeah.
And there's different needs in different countries all over the world. Hopefully people can, what I would like to see. And, actually one thing, I liked, which I saw in a Sydney scene recently, was we saw Toby's Estate had the Underdog series. I like that. They put together coffees from kind of countries that were underdog countries, or countries that aren't famous for producing. Yeah, they had a few. I think they had Mexico in there. They might have had Malawi. And these coffees were coffees that they were pushing, and they were pretty good coffees, like.
Hey, that one from Myanmar was delicious.
It was a great coffee, yeah. So, it's good if people can push. I always liked this idea that people could push some of their more ordinary coffees. So we're not just chasing wildly different flavor profiles or spectacularly high-end coffees, but saying, okay, well, all these coffees we get are actually really good, and let's celebrate them, and maybe let's promote them, and let's pay more for them, and let's ask our customers to pay more for them, if that's what's required.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's obviously always going to be an argument between between people who want to spend more money on green coffee and people who don't necessarily want to spend more money on green coffee,
or don't see the value in it. Like, if I can buy coffee cheap, why the fuck should I think about spending more money on it?
Indeed. And I think that's a valid debate to have. I mean, you know, when your business gets to that stage where you're like, okay, well, here we are, and this is us, and we've generated a lot of customers, and we're making a bit of money, and, you know, everybody's getting paid. How are we going to make more money? Well, you got to cut costs, obviously. We do need to look at where we cut costs, and we do need to think about it, you know.
Oh yeah.
We do really need to think about it. And if we're going to Origin and we buy coffee and we buy so much coffee that you know, maybe we have a green buyer, that's expensive, right? Mm-hmm. That's an expensive thing to do, to go and source coffee in that manner. So where do we cut costs in that process? Yeah. And do we need to go to Origin all the time? And do we need like 10 dudes going to Origin when we go to Origin? Like, you know, that's expensive. We could save some of that money, and
especially, you know, from Australia, like that's, you know, John Allen was saying like it's cheaper to go to Origin than it is to go to SCA. But that's if you're in America. If you're in Australia, that's not the fucking case. Like flying from Australia to anywhere is as expensive as fuck. Like that's,
yeah,
it costs a lot of money. So we
need to work with, like, it is really important we're working with people, good people at Coffee Origin, I believe. And, you know, we this idea that, yeah, we're going to cut out the middleman and we're going to go and deal directly with these farmers and this and that doesn't really work if we're dealing with smallholder coffee farmers. So I can go and deal with a large coffee farmer who's in El Salvador or Brazil or Colombia, and they're capable of exporting coffee, basically.
Yep.
So I can deal directly with them, and we can do all of it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the reality if I go and work with smallholder coffee farmers. I have to be working with good people on the ground. So the decisions we make regarding who we work with are really important. You know, if I'm a coffee roaster, big or small, if I'm, you know, roasting, you know, half a ton a week, or I'm roasting 2 tons a day, the decision on who my export partners are in various countries are really important, and price can only be one part of the consideration. And if we're forward-thinking coffee roasters, we want to be thinking, what are these Origin partners, these export partners we're working with, doing to ensure sustainable viability in coffee farming in these origins that they're working in? And if they're not, you shouldn't be working with them. Work with someone who is, because if they're not actively doing it, if they're not spending heaps of money in doing it, then heaps of your money that you're paying for this coffee, then I wouldn't be working with them.
Is that a part of the transparency model?
And you're thinking, I'm doing this and this is what we're doing forever, and we hope it carries on for, you know, forever. You should really be working with people who are putting a lot of energy, time and energy towards that, and a lot of resources towards that.
Is that a part of the transparency model that we want to be rooting for? You know, that if we're paying someone on the ground, we want to be able to know how much they're giving the growers, how much they're giving the pickers, and we want to be able to negotiate how much of the cost that we pay for this coffee actually goes towards the farmers.
I think that's, like, for me personally, as like, you know, like I buy green coffee. I buy pretty small quantities of green coffee. But my ultimate aim would be to be able to do exactly that. Go, okay, well, you know what? I'd like to pay a little bit more for this coffee because I want that to go to this guy, and I want that to go there. And there's nothing to stop you putting that in the contract and making it happen, and getting all parties involved to sit around the table, I think that's great. I don't think that happens a lot, but it does happen. It definitely happens. I know people who do that kind of thing, and there's coffee roasters who definitely do that kind of stuff in Australia and the US. And there's coffee roasters who don't. But as a coffee buyer, you've got to ask those kind of questions. And you should definitely be asking, okay, so how much do you get paid for this? Or how much does this guy get paid for that? How much of the price I pay goes here and how much of the price pay goes there. And we shouldn't be shy or embarrassed about wanting answers to those questions. I think that's just doing our due diligence. And asking people and asking multiple people, because, you get different answers.
Gee, shock horror, huh?
Yeah, you ask this guy and he'll be like this, and this guy will tell you this much. So, it's worth asking those questions, and maybe shaking the tree a little bit and seeing what falls out. That's just part of doing your job there. So, and that's why, and for me, that's kind of why I want to do work for myself. Like I was working for Campus Coffee, and a fantastic job buying green coffee and flying around the world and spending, months and months every year in countries like Colombia and Kenya and El Salvador and places I really enjoy being. And being well paid for that. But one of the things that appealed to me most was talking to coffee farmers who again are like either they're generally small business owners, talking to them about their businesses and talking to them about how their business and the business that I represented work together, for a long-term future. Now, that's a very personal discussion, and that's a really important discussion. And so I felt like, okay, well, I want to be in a position where this is even more meaningful because I actually own the business.
Yeah.
Because I might go, well, this is what I think is the best thing for this relationship or for this business. But I am operating on a mandate, obviously, from my superiors who own a business. So I'm not always able to go and do what I necessarily wanted to do, which is fine. And you operate in that space, and you do your job. But I felt like for me, it's more meaningful if I'm doing it as a business person myself, as a business owner, because then, okay, well, now that conversation is really real, and that our relationship is one of mutual survival. We're just all about making each other survive, and so I think that is I think that conversation is most effective when the people are fully invested in it. And if you're a business owner, you're fully invested in it.
Oh yeah.
If you're not fully invested in it, you're probably going broke or trying to get out of it. So that's for me, that's what I want to be able to do, is discuss with people in those situations, and discuss with smallholder coffee farmers. Okay, let's do this.
I don't know about you, but do you feel, as a business owner, do you get a sense of pride at making those decisions? Because I mean, I think people don't appreciate, who don't have a business, how much consideration goes into where you spend every cent, right? And at least those of us that are trying to run our business quite consciously, deciding to put our money somewhere, and support a farm or support a roaster or support any kind of a supplier that we work with. There's a real conscious decision in, well, I'm choosing to support this business because I believe in it and I back it, and I kind of feel a sense of pride in that. Do you experience that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, that's part of why you're in business, right? Because that's, you're proud because that's you're expressing, to your customers and to everybody, really, the whole world, what you're all about. So yeah, that's good. There is pride, and yeah, I definitely feel the pride, and you feel probably a need to defend it.
Yeah.
Other people are going to be like, wow, that's just ridiculous. You're dumb. You're probably going to be like, oh, well, I'll defend it. Hey. And, like when there's things that happen in your business that you're not happy with, but they still happen in your business, you're ashamed as well. It's like,
Oh,
man,
fuck yeah,
I'm
man.
like, oh, man, I'm not really happy about that. Man, you got to sit with it and be like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, what's your plan to turn that shameful scenario into one that you're proud of?
And it's character building, right?
Sorry?
It's character building, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. Look,
eating humble
really
pie
thing
is necessary.
You got to, to achieve greatness, you got to start from humbleness, or to achieve any kind of knowledge, you got to start from humbleness, because how would we know it was great if it wasn't separate from being humble?
Yeah.
So I think that's the real challenge, and that's going to be the challenge, and this is what's going to be the kind of identity crisis challenge maybe for coffee roasters, is how we transition and go, okay, yeah, well, I'm not happy about that coffee that I'm buying that's in my blend or that's on my offering, because I don't know what happens in that supply chain, or there's something that happens in that supply chain that is against my ethos or against, what this business is about. And what's my plan for transforming that?
Mm-hmm.
And can I reveal that to other people, my customers included, that, hey, I want to change this. And if I reveal it, will they hate me and abandon me? Or will they not even care and just be like, who cares, buddy, whatever, I love it. So I think that's going to be really hard for people, because there's, like, I've got coffees in my blend that I don't know the traceability on, and I'm concerned about them, because I think, well, there could be something, unclean in that supply chain. There could be something that is negative in that supply chain. So I got to acknowledge that, and I got to acknowledge that with my other, with the other people who are my business partner, and say, okay, well, what are we going to do? I want to change this. How do we work towards changing it? What should it look like? What should we be, what are we going to be happy with here? I mean, that's very important. But yeah, how much you reveal of that to your customers is really difficult, and it's really hard, and I appreciate, I didn't hear the Mark Dunham podcast, and I actually go back and listen to it because I'm quite interested to hear what he said, but I'm interested in this idea that he was saying wholesale was becoming unviable, or maybe whatever he'd said around that. I mean, wholesale is a really difficult consideration for a lot of coffee roasters, because you're dealing with other small businesses, and you might be like, okay, well, we've worked really hard to get to this position, and we're really happy that we're paying this much for coffee and selling it at this price, and we're really proud of that. And other guys will be like, we love your coffee, buddy, but I got to get a lower price on that because I don't have any money. And other small business owners are really looking to cut costs also.
Yeah.
So they're really tough customers. They're really hard customers. And you might think you're onto a long-term relationship with them, and then they turn around and say, you know what, buddy, we're going with these other guys because, hey, they give it to us for cheaper. Goodbye. Come get your machine. So you got a lot of skin in the game as a coffee wholesaler. You got so much skin in the game. It's frightening. When we opened this business, I wasn't keen to do wholesale coffee at all. And we do a little bit of coffee for a cafe, and I'm happy, and I have a good relationship with that cafe owner, and I've known him for some time, but it's not something that I'm interested in going down in a hurry.
It's a whole other business model. Like there's a whole other set of skills that you need to have to build a wholesale program.
Indeed. And for me, a real priority is making my business profitable, but also marry up with, the principles that we deemed to be important to the company when we started it. So if I can do those things and then be sustainable at doing those things, that's really big. I wouldn't want a wholesale business to undermine, the sustainability of that.
Yeah, it's going to take you away from so much of what you're trying to build right now, right?
For me, yeah, for sure. But I mean, it does offer all kinds of things as well.
Yeah.
And one thing that people are really excited in is getting more green coffee. So that's a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we got to get more coffee because we got to sell more coffee. So, we got a lot of coffee to sell, and we got to turn a lot of people on to drinking coffee. Whether we're coffee farmers or we're coffee roasters or we're coffee retailers, we all got the same objective: for people to drink more coffee.
Yep.
And more people to drink more coffee. So we want, an extra billion people in the world to drink coffee, and we want all the people who are drinking coffee to drink another couple of cups a day, please.
Yep.
That's the objective. So, that's important. I mean, I think, I don't want to, kind of hammer these dudes who are doing wholesale because coffee farmers love that, right? They're like, yes, thank you. You're buying all this coffee off me. They can have true impact. Companies, the size of Campos Coffee or Toby's Estate can have real impact in coffee producing, in the coffee lands. So there's always this desire, let's get more coffee because then we can do more.
Yep.
But there's all kinds of other people that are going to need to be paid as well. And there's a lot of considerations to take into place. For me anyway, being able to, like this idea, so we're saying, we want to be able to sell coffee, at a price that reflects what we pay for it. And we're paying a price that reflects what the farmer gets for it, and what our origin partners get for it. That's a really noble and important name. And I think, we should all kind of get onto that, and start doing just that. But it is a competitive market out there. But I've seen in the area where we have our cafe, I see a lot of other small businesses, and it's an area which is a semi-industrial area, and there's a lot of sandwich shops and lunch shops, and they have very low prices, because customers are demanding low prices, and a lot of these guys look like they're really struggling. And I'm sure a lot of them are really afraid of putting up their prices because they're worried they'll lose business. But if they continue in the way they continue, they go broke sooner or later, or they basically just have a business that doesn't make any money that they work in until they die.
Yeah.
So it's there's no bright future for any of those places unless they raise their prices. But maybe they do lose customers if they raise their prices. So they have to work on, how they're differentiating themselves if it's not price. It's pretty scary for people. I sympathize with how scary it is for people. And if I go and visit all of these people and I say, hey guys, why don't we all just get together and put all our prices up by $1? that's illegal. You know, that's collusion. That's
Yeah.
anti-competitive behavior. You know. But I feel like going around and be like, hey guys, let's just all put our prices up, because I don't think any of you guys are making money out here. Hey.
Yeah. Let's all just charge the same price for coffee.
At least to like keep turning up to work. So
can you form a chamber of commerce or something?
Probably feel the same way. Like, oh man, I'd love to be selling coffees like this and that, but I can't put up my wholesale prices because guys will abandon me. But yeah, it's a battle to the death out there. So they got nothing to lose, right?
Yeah, and especially with the market so saturated, right? Like, again, that's what Mark was saying, is that, you know, the market's so saturated that everyone's so competitive at the moment that it just doesn't make sense. Well, it's not that it doesn't make sense, because they didn't pull the wholesale program, but it makes it challenging and less attractive to have a wholesale program. It's just rough.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough game out there. Yeah, look, who knows what the future will look like, you know, for specialty coffee or for just coffee in general in Australia. I mean, maybe we'll see specialty have a smaller share of the market in Australia in the future. Who knows? Maybe we'll see you know, the emergence of different players in the game. You know, who really knows? I'll be really interested in seeing what happens. Yeah, it is a very interesting question, and who knows how it will continue to grow in markets like the US and China.
Well, China are planting their own crops, aren't they?
Yeah, China's well involved in it.
Oh yeah, full steam
plan towards 100% sustainability. They can produce all of the coffee that they consume, I think, is their aim.
Yeah, and same thing with wine. They're planting their own vineyards. I think about 5 years ago, when that documentary, The Red Door, did you ever see that? Mm-hmm. At the time, if all of the vineyards in the world, they were saying by 2020, I may be talking completely out of my ass here, but if I remember it correctly, if all the vineyards in the world were just supplying to China, it still wouldn't be enough by 2020. That's the rate at which wine consumption is on the increase in China.
Yeah, okay.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
that's why they have to grow their own vineyards.
Indeed. I mean, and I think, for good quality coffees and great coffees, people are going to pay more and more.
Yeah,
those coffees are going to be harder to find. There's going to be, you know, a lot of difficulty ahead, I think, for people at Coffee Origin. Hey, climate change is going to wreak havoc on a lot of coffee producing regions.
What specifically? Because while we've talked about sustainability in the supply chain, we really haven't talked about how climate change is going to affect shit for coffee farmers. What are the kinds of things that are going to be the biggest effect, do you think?
Temperature rise, really, at altitude. I think will be one of the biggest dramas, essentially.
At all origins?
You know, some origins are going to experience it more than other origins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, kind of scientific models that have been made have suggested that countries like Nicaragua will find it increasingly difficult and maybe find it impossible.
Wow.
Because of proliferation of disease, drought. Yeah, I mean it's a big story, and yeah, it's a big issue. The kind of things that face coffee on that level, disease, insects. If we have an increase of a couple of degrees at 1,600 meters above sea level, it could mean that a disease, an insect can exist there where it previously couldn't.
Okay.
A change in overnight temperatures can be a real problem.
Do things like mold and fungus and yeast and all of that that naturally exist, if you get an increase in humidity and temperature, so
they'll tend to proliferate. Your
yeah.
molds and your fungi will tend to proliferate if you've got an increase in humidity and in temperature.
Is that what happens with coffee rust?
Yeah, coffee rust is I'm pretty sure it needs moisture to kind of to help it move around. But coffee rust, there was big. Look, I'm not sure whether we can directly link coffee rust outbreaks in Central America or Colombia, for example, to climate change. I'd say there is probably some scientific evidence to dispute that. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to wade in and say, yeah, this is directly climate change related. There could be a number of factors involved, but we'll certainly see the impact of climate change in the coffee lands. Even if it just means people need to change how they do things.
Right.
Which if they don't change, they may well
lose their crops.
And lose their crops. So, it's certainly going to upset coffee production.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, have you and G thought about how, we've started talking on this podcast about the idea of the looming financial crash that's going to happen sometime in the next 2 years. All the experts are talking about it. Have you guys started to think about that and how you might have to start making preparations for that when it happens in your business?
Yeah, I think about it frequently.
Oh, great. I thought you were laughing at me because this fucking crazy girl, what is she coming up with now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of uncertainty in world financial economics. And there's the potential for Australia to have a mortgage crisis similar to what happened in the United States.
Is it on the horizon at the moment?
I don't think anybody wants that to happen in Australia. So I think, I think the Reserve Bank in Australia is pretty keen to keep interest rates low so people don't start having to default on their mortgages. One of the issues in Australia has been these interest repayment only loans, right? That so people have been, because of looseness in the financial services sector and the banking sector in Australia, basically, people who probably shouldn't have been able to borrow a lot of money borrowed a lot of money to buy homes. And one of the ways that they were able to do that was through interest-only mortgages, where they just paid back on the interest.
So the capital
not on the
never
actual
went down.
loan. And you had an interest-only period of 3 to 5 years. Now, a lot of those interest-only periods are starting to now expire, and people have to start paying larger chunks, which is a big issue in Australia because wages haven't grown at all in the last 8 years. So wages have been stagnant for 8 years. So people aren't earning any more money. So they may, when they took those loans, they may well have expected to be earning more money to be able to cover those increased repayments. and they're not.
Which isn't unreasonable, right? You expect that my wage is going to increase over 8 years.
Indeed. I mean, and look, for a lot of people who got the Australian property market, they were just given very bad advice. And, you know, we've seen the Royal Commission into Banking in Australia to show that you know, criminal behaviour criminal activity took place and was sanctioned in you know, lending institutions all over the country. So, yeah, a lot of these people were led down the garden path and told that they couldn't lose out of this, that this was just a win-win investment. They didn't understand the level of risk they were taking. So, yeah, a lot of people are in a pretty unfortunate situation, and we will expect to see people default on their mortgages in Australia. Whether it'll become a crisis or not, who knows? There's no sign of like the construction boom slowing down too much in Sydney. So construction's still pretty robust in Sydney. So we just hope that stays so. Really, like that's my hope. Is because
I don't think it'll ever slow
construction
down.
industry is where my customer base comes from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I would dare say the construction industry underpins a lot of
The early morning trade.
coffee shop
Yep.
consumers in places like Sydney and Melbourne, because there's a lot of money being made off that and all the associated industries.
Yep.
And a lot of people,
especially around the 6 a.m. trade, right? Like,
yeah,
all
especially
of that
daytime.
Yep.
Yeah, daytime trade. So yeah, hopefully these guys continue to make money. So
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you know, people are still building, and people are still buying, but it's harder for smaller people, and for less off people. So we are invariably going to see the poor get poorer in Australia and the rich get richer. So yeah, hopefully the rich who are getting richer are paying down some of those wages into the pockets of the people who work for them, so they can come and spend it in our cafe.
Place some money on that? I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we rely on that, you know, but a lot of my customers are small business people too, and you know, like they're involved in certain aspects of the construction industry. But yeah, look, there's definitely concern around that. Yeah, we'll find out if coffee is recession proof or not. That's for sure.
Has it survived? Oh, well, yeah, it's been through the recession of 2008, wasn't it? 2008, 2009 was the last recession. I mean, it survived that. I mean, it kept, but we were in a boom as an industry. Yeah? We were in a, you know, it's been in a boom state for about 15 years. It's starting to take off.
Yeah, and Australia
right?
was largely unscathed by the crisis that rocked the rest of the world in 2008 onwards. You know, partly because of the mining boom in Australia.
And
you know, Australia was probably had better banking regulation 10 years ago than it had right now.
Yep.
So we kind of loosened up banking regulation significantly in the last 10 years.
What do you think is going to happen to a lot of these business owners that have these fucking $2 million fit outs and, you know?
I mean, people are going to go broke in Australia, you know, for sure. Like a lot of people will go broke in Australia. I mean, I think there's still people who are going to spend big money on their fit outs and make it.
Mm-hmm.
We might see people start to spend less money on fit outs, and that be okay. You know, maybe when people were, you know, and when it was the norm to kind of spend $1 million on a fit out or $500,000 on a fit out, maybe that was a period of time that, you know, a phase that we've gone through, and that and now people will start to spend less on fit outs. I don't know. I think, you know, I think we'll probably see a little bit of a shifting of sands in the industry in places like, in markets like Sydney and Melbourne. I'm not sure what it'll look like, but, you know, it's there's a lot of different players in the game, so it could come from anywhere. But I do think on the whole, people in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, they like their cafes, they like their local cafes, they like small independently owned cafes, and they'll probably continue to go to them. People are hooked on their lattes and the convenience and the quality of the food that they can get in their cafes. And I think a lot of people, it's just part of their lifestyle, and yeah, maybe they're not going to be able to spend as much in future, but, you know, there's people getting richer in Australia too.
Oh, fuck yeah.
There's
like,
plenty
I'm
of people getting rich in Australia.
I'm astounded at the price of fucking property at the moment. I mean, look, I've always been astounded at the price of property in Australia. I remember when Nick and I bought our first home, you know, a first home in Roselands, dude, was like $572,000 for like a typical first home for newlyweds. And that was going back like 14 years ago when that was, you know, and now it's crazy. Like the same
in
home
Roselands.
That's in Roselands, right? So that's what I'm saying. Back then in Roselands, it was that much for a 3-bedroom double brick house. Now the same house is easily over $1 million. Easily. In fucking Roselands, dude. That's crazy. Now I'm hearing of people spending $800,000 on a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, look, as somebody who sells, you know, like coffee and food basically to the public, it's important, if you want to get a whole bunch of different people from a whole bunch of different kind of socioeconomic categories, you need to think, you know, what you've got for them, and who's the guy who's got like $5 to spend, and who's the guy who's got $50 to spend, and trying to have something for them. If you want both of them, which I do, you know, like I want rich and poor. I want all kinds of people to be my customers. I need all kinds of people to be my customers. And then I suppose you try and market what you think they want to them. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in that, and you know, you should really think about it. The days of you know, build it and they will come, I think are over in Sydney, and you got to work really hard. People will tell you, you know, no, do anything and you'll get them. Mostly people who want you to sign leases will tell you that, but you know, like, you got to work hard to get those customers, because there's heaps of options out there. For me, that's really exciting. Like, I like that. And I'm not overtly competitive, but I like that because it's about you getting out there and showing the strength of your offering, and proving to your customers that they should come to you, and this is why. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things that people can do to increase the strength of their offering is work on their customer service. And if that's whether you're a barista looking to get a good paycheck, or whether you're a business owner looking to, you know, make a viable business, like, customer service, like, is just like so much of a big deal for customers.
Funny, huh?
Funnily
Who would have thunk it?
And, you know, like, just, you got to work on it, hey, and understanding what it's about, and investing some time into thinking about it when you're not serving customers is important, and investing time into discussing it with your staff or with your team, or having some kind of objectives in your customer service, or having some kind of protocols or procedures in your customer service. Investing in that kind of stuff is going to be a good investment of time, I think, for business owners, because customer service can be as unique as you want it to be, and you really can do anything with it, and it's free. Like, you don't have to buy it off anyone.
Yeah.
It's not like coffee. You got to buy it somewhere before you sell it on, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're the guy growing it, and even he's got to buy the seedlings probably. So, you know, you can really own your customer service, but it's really, really difficult, because then you're going to entrust your staff to do it, and then you're going to have to put in heaps of time there. So, yeah, that's something that we work really hard on, and it's something we want to continue to work hard on. And I think it works for us. Like, I think we have a lot of customers because we give good service. And I'm not trying to spend heaps of money on staff either. I'm not trying to run glasses of water out to customers, or you know, offer table service or anything like that. I don't offer table service. So, you know, you want to be imaginative there. So that's all fun stuff if you want to think about how you can do that, and that's an opportunity for you to express your personality through this. And it's an opportunity for you to provide something unique that no one else can provide, if you really kind of do a good job with it. And so, and the minute you kind of build that, and then it disappears, is the minute you got to start to rebuild it, you know.
Oh yeah.
And you might have to acknowledge that and be like, hey guys, we let you down, sorry, we're going to come back to do it. And you'll see successful businesses do that all the time, and a lot of companies, you know, like, you know, I mean, companies like Starbucks, you know, their whole thing was built on just the customer having this great experience, right? So, yeah, I think if you work hard at all of those things, you'll probably survive in the game.
Well, especially because I think
hopefully, thrown in.
I think the thing is, and the way that I'm seeing, because I'm putting a lot of thought into this at the moment, particularly because next month we're going to be focusing, our content theme is going to be on entrepreneurship. And, you know, given that it's such a heavy focus on that, entrepreneurship is also about surviving periods of intense stress. You know, your business will go great for a couple of years, and then it will go through a dive for a year, and or you know, you don't know what's happening in the global economy, things that you can't see coming. So, you know, we want to talk about how we can prepare businesses for that and manage expectations. People think entrepreneurship is so fucking sexy. But, you know, we need to manage their expectations before they embark on that. That's my hope anyway. And I think in thinking about this looming, you know, global financial crisis that's coming, because, you know, we are in a very long growth period, and, you know, America is in record amounts of deficit, and those loans are going to come due at some point. They can't keep increasing the debt ceiling without seeing a ramification to that. And so this shit's going to implode at some point. And we want to at least get people thinking about this, so that they're not surprised by it. Like 2008 was a massive surprise for most people. And so, you know, I want people to start thinking about the idea of like the positives that come from something like this, and how you can prepare for something like this from now. Because when you experience a financial crash as a community, you want to be around other people so that you don't feel alone. Community is going to be an enormously important thing when everybody's struggling, right? Certainly luxury items for the majority of the population are going to be out. avocado toast is not going to be something that everyone can afford to buy when they've had to default in their loan. But people are going to try and find a way to afford their coffee every morning, if not every morning, every other morning, just so that they can see a friendly face that reminds them of more stable times. And I think that the role that the cafe can play in that, and our baristas can play in that, is incredibly valuable to the community once shit does start falling over. And building that customer service base from now, building those relationships from now and making them solid, and letting people know how valued they are. I think in times of crisis, that I'm convinced it's coming, but in times of crisis, those relationships are everything to people. And I think that's the silver lining to this. I think it's something positive that we can start working on from now to prepare.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, strengthening our relationships, throughout the supply chain, is certainly a good idea when you're experiencing good times, because you may well need to lean on those relationships in bad times, or those relationships may well need to hold each other up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's important in a supply chain, and that no one fails, that everybody is able to keep standing. So yeah, we've got to help each other out, and the relationship's the way to do it. I agree. Yeah, look, we hope so, and it is important that the community aspect of the cafe is still really important, even in places like Sydney. I don't think it's been lost.
No.
Yeah, I think it's really important for a lot of people. It's a big part of going to the cafe. And I like it. That's why I wanted to work in cafes. I like that kind of, that group. I like that feeling. I depend on my customers to come in the door for their coffee, just like they depend on their coffee.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's and how transparent and how kind of vulnerable we are in front of our customers with regards to all of that is up to us.
Oh, hell yes. Hey, so I know you and I have spoken about this before it got announced, but you heard we're coming to Australia?
Yes, I did hear, yes.
So I was going to give you a call about this tomorrow, but I'm talking to you now, so I may as well ask you now. Will you be one of the panelists?
I'll have to look at my calendar on that one.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
Well, I'm going to invite you to be on one of the panels for a Sunday, because I know that that's your day off.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the Roasters Day so we're doing the tour in Sydney and in Melbourne, and we're doing it exactly the same way in both cities. So the Friday night's going to be the kickoff party that we are putting together a really fun new coffee competition for, which once we've finalised that, we're going to announce it. But La Mazzocco sponsoring the kickoff party. And then on the Saturday is going to be the cafe owners day, and we're starting that late, so that's going to happen we're going to start that at 12 o'clock with a lunch, and then that'll go into the evening. So because I know so many cafe owners have to be there for the morning on a Saturday, because it's one of the busiest mornings of the week. So it's cafe owners on Saturday, and then Sunday is roasters, and then Monday is baristas. We tried to have it so that we could follow when hospitality weekends and all that kind of stuff. So I want you, Angie. I've got to put a call into her and see if she'll do it. Maybe you can cover her shift on the Monday or the Saturday or something like that. But we're being very particular with who we invite to be guests on the panels, just because, you know me, I'm all about making sure that we get the right information out there with, you know, directed by people who have huge integrity, not who have, you know, 100,000 Instagram followers. I could give zero fucks about how many Instagram followers anyone has, but there are people who I've learnt from in the industry and who I've seen mentor people in the industry, and I want the best quality information to be passed on through Map It Forward. That's the point. Okay. You know, there's too much shit information out there that's got no basis. Like, people have been in the industry for 5 minutes and calling themselves, you know, expert consultants and shit. I'm like, I'm not about that at all. Mm-hmm. So have a think about it for me.
Okay, will do.
We're still
honored to be invited.
You'd be honoring me by saying yes, sir. Okay. So thank you for that. We're still putting together the panel discussion topics. But we've got some really great people that have just jumped at the opportunity.
I've heard you've got some really good people. I have checked the lineup. You've got some great people, yeah.
Yeah. It was so funny because we had somebody else that was going to be on the bill and had to pull out because you know, I'm not going to say any names because that person had to move countries. And so the person, I happened to be talking with someone else, and I'm like, hey, listen, do you want to do this? And they jumped at the opportunity, and just like everyone on the panel, everyone on the bill was like, yes, straight away. I was stoked to have that happen. So, you know, cool people who I've never had the chance to work with before. Like, I've never had the chance to work with Al Keating from Coffee Supreme, but big fan of what they're doing. And he is just such a chill guy. It's fantastic to see that. You know, Scott is going to be doing pretty much the whole morning on the roasting days in both Sydney and Melbourne. People by the end of these workshops are going to be sick of Scott and I being in conversation. Because we start with like the map, because there's going to be a map for each day. So the first presentation of each day is about an hour and a half of going through this map that we've created for cafe owners, for production roasters and business owners of roasteries, and for baristas. So it's a 10-year map in how to have a business or a career in those kinds of things, and really serious detail that requires a lot more than an hour and a half to go through it. We're going to try and find our best way to steamroll through that. But yeah, Scott and I will start with that. And then the second session is going to be Scott and I talking about what you should and should not do as a coffee roaster and someone who owns a roastery. And that's about an hour and a half. And like, Scott could talk for about 4 days about that shit.
Yeah.
So fun times are going to be had there. But awesome. Yeah, it's we're all super stoked about it. I don't think Australia's ever had anything like this before.
No, probably not.
No, but fun times. So I will just keep the date. That's the Sunday, because I know that's your day off. So keep this the Sunday. Give me a few hours of your time in the afternoon so that...
Okay, I'll let you know. I'm sure we can...
Yeah. Well, I'll give you as much time in the morning to do all the laundry that you never got to do during the week, because I know it's your only day to yourself. But yeah, you and G will be absolutely invited to the kickoff party as my guests. So, awesome. Which would be such an honor to have you there. It just could be nice to be able to see everyone and
totally.
Chat and have some food and some booze. And not that any of us really drink, but everybody else in the coffee industry drinks like fucking food.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. So you and I have been talking for almost 2.5 hours, dude. Yes. So I know this is your only day off. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you for having me on the show. It's a real honor. It's a real pleasure, and you know, it's always fun to, you know, discuss with you, you know, relevant topics. I think there should be more discussion on these kind of things. So thank you for inviting me on the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And thank you for being someone who I always looked up to in the industry. And like when I was a puppy barista, dear fucking God, did you kick the shit out of me? Not physically, but you know, you definitely made me a better barista by the standard that you expected from me. You know, that was, I think, if anything, and it's probably why I think a lot about Elixir and why I have such a high standard for what Elixir needs to be. And I think I learned how to expect that standard out of a product during my time at Campos.
Okay.
And you were very much like, I don't know if you remember this, but I could never make a hot chocolate.
Yes, I remember.
Do you remember? I kept fucking up hot chocolates. And I remember you were very patient for a little bit of time. You were like, don't worry, you're going to get this. You're going to get this. And then you just broke. There was like a moment when you looked at me and you said, you have to get this right.
There's no option. There's no other option.
Anyone who's worked with you as a puppy barista remembers the moment that you do that for the first time. And you just looked at me and went, you have to get this right. And I legit started shaking. I'm like, fuck, I have to get this right. I can't believe that I can make actual coffees, but I can't make a fucking hot chocolate. And that was formative for me. That was really transformative, actually. That was the moment when I started to realize, like, listen, if you want to be good at this, you have to just start being good at this and stop doubting yourself. And you played a big role in that for me. So thank you, sir.
Oh, good. I'm glad it worked on you. Hey, there's other people it didn't work on.
I know.
Like, screw that, dude.
Dude, I remember some of the horror stories that when you were working with G at Apex, and the kids were legit terrified of you. They were like, Lee, is it true?
Worried.
I remember Ashley, I think it was.
Like burn people with scalding water and stuff.
Yeah. Ashley said to me, she said, hey, is it true he throws latte glasses at people's heads? I'm like, no.
Yeah, there's some pretty bad stories about me. I was never like the Gordon Ramsay of the coffee machine. But yeah, there's a few moments I probably lost my cool.
But you never threw a fucking latte out glass at someone.
I'm glad to be reminded of that because I am fairly patient with people until the point where I'm like, okay, now you just got to get it.
Yeah, and the thing was like,
it's on you now.
Yeah, and that's what you need. You need someone to show you that, yes, there's a space, there's a learning time, but I think you're taking a bit too much poetic license with this. Hurry the fuck up and get it done. And that was like, it was just a look. You weren't an asshole about it or anything like that at that moment. There were times when you were, but that was because we were all under pressure. You know, we're making a lot of coffees a day, but I will never forget that moment when you looked at me and said that. And I'm like, okay, he's not playing.
Well, I think I was like that. And I still am like that to a certain extent because people were like that with me.
Yeah.
And then and it helped me because then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I've actually got to do this. I'm the one that's going to do this. This person who's helping me is not going to do it. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
So I just, pulled my socks up and really gone for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I had a positive impact.
You absolutely did. Like, and I'm grateful to this day. I still learn from the things that I did working around you and the boys to today, and that's the marks of a career that when you choose where you work carefully, those places should be teaching you long after you've left there. That's just my look on that. And we teach that through Map It Forward. Like, choose your employees really carefully because they should have a mark on you for the rest of your career.
Yeah. Well, I learned lessons in that time that are valuable to me today, and I learned lessons at other times in other roles in that company that are valuable to me also. So yeah, they have to. There's a lot to be gained, and we shouldn't forget those things.
Ever. It's something that I'm starting to see a lot here, that people are just taking whatever job that they can get, or people are surprised at why employers aren't treating them right, and you ask them, well, what questions did you ask them during interview? And they say none. And I speak to employers here, and I ask them, what kinds of questions are people that are interviewing with you asking you? Nothing. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. So, you know, these are the things that we're trying to incorporate during with Map It Forward, and just empowering people to know how to ask questions so that they can understand what kind of an employer they're getting when they accept a job. So
yeah, exactly.
Thanks for what you do for the industry, dude. We're lucky to have you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you in Australia.
Yay. Definitely dinner's going to be happening when I get down there. But thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
Bye, Ben. See you later.
See you later, Lee. Bye.